First of all, I'm not afraid of AI at all. I don't think that we're going to end up in, the Terminator or a Space Odyssey or anything like that. And that's why we have sustainers.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode, as well as free training on creativity, over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have on the show Rhonda Scharf. Rhonda Scharf is a professional speaker, trainer, author, and consultant specializing in people power and effectiveness. She has traveled the globe, setting people on the right track with a unique perspective on life, work, and getting things done both today and in the future. As a top speaker, Rhonda is the only person in the world to have earned a CSP, Certified Speaking Professional, Global Speaking Fellow, be inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame, and honored with the Spirit of CAPS, which is the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. All of these are very highly coveted speaking certifications and awards. Her latest book is called Alexa is Stealing Your Job, and it's my great pleasure to have Rhonda with us today. So welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here this morning.
So share with everyone what's happening in your world at the moment.
Well, we're just heading into the holiday season, so things have kind of settled down. I actually found my office, which is pretty nice. It's been really busy. The book was released November 5th. So in that period of time, it's been incredibly busy. There's been a lot of interest, a lot of activity going that. And so it's been keeping me hopping and keeping me excited, but looking forward to kind of sleeping in my own bed for 5 minutes.
So you're very busy. You're on the road a lot as a speaker. How do you kind of find that time to write? Do you tend to write in blocks, or are you very disciplined in terms of every morning kind of getting up, or you're writing on the planes? What's your way of doing things?
I write on planes. I have been doing this job for 30 years. And so before Wi-Fi hit airplanes, right? So I have just over the years been disciplined that when I sit on a plane, I don't put in my headphones. I don't listen to music. I don't watch movies, and I write. And so obviously some of those flights I take are incredibly long, and it's almost like my brain turns on the second my foot hits the airport. Like I am wired to go. So I don't sleep either, which is not good very, very much. But it's almost like, Pavlov's theory. It's plain right. And it just works really well that way for me.
That's fine. And no interruptions, switch the Wi-Fi off and just get on with the writing.
And so just get on.
How did you get into this world of speaking? You've been doing this for a number of years now, but where did it begin for you? How did you get into this business?
I was an IT trainer back in the 80s before anybody even knew what IT stood for. And it was, I started off as help desk, and back in the 80s, and I know some of your listeners weren't even born yet, so stop it. But back in the 80s, nobody really knew what they were doing. And for whatever reason, my brain understood computers, understood how they worked. So just organically, I became help desk. And so, 1,000 times a day, my phone would ring and everybody would say, "Help me, Rhonda." And everyone thought they were the only one who said that. And then over time, as you can imagine, they realized, this Rhonda can't be doing this all day long. So I ended up being help desk, and I ended up then being training. They stopped well, there wasn't really training back then. They stopped outsourcing the book, and they started saying, "Okay, Rhonda, you do that." And so back in 1993, I jumped out on my own. But that was after, several years of working in IT with a company. And I started as an IT trainer, and it built from there. And I stopped doing Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that stuff. I stopped doing that. And I ended up being focused more on efficiency and effectiveness, so the people power things. But I'm still very much in tune with the tools that make you more efficient and effective.
So your latest book is kind of talking about tools a lot. It's getting into the space of obviously artificial intelligence. Before we kind of get into the book and kind of go deep dive on that, I was interested, just kind of learning a little bit about you. You were talking about this kind of creative process that we kind of talk a lot about on this show, about your writing time is on that plane. But you talked about a time when you didn't feel like you really had that level of confidence creatively, and you took some steps, and it kind of took you in an interesting kind of path where you've come to a good place. But I think
this is a really kind of common thing that you and I kind of discussed before. So I'd love to know, first of all, where did this kind of begin? Let's talk about this inception of thinking about creativity. How do you think about your own creativity and your path on actually working with someone related to creativity?
Yeah. So the joke that I share with my husband is I do my best work in bed, and I do all my creativity in the middle of the night. And so like many people, my brain just flies during the night. So I wake up in the morning and I get all excited, and, you race into the office and you do all the stuff that you thought of in the middle of the night while you're awake. And then after, many years of doing that, at some point you start to question, am I coming up with new ideas? Am I just recycling old ideas? Am I getting stale? And so what I decided to do, because everybody tells you to do that, is hire a coach. And a coach was really about, taking my business from where it was and being much larger. And of course, to be much larger, I had to be far more creative than I was. I had to get out of the box that I was in. So I hired a coach, and I spent real money on this coach, which I believe everyone should do. And I still hire coaches, but this particular coach was really about taking me and my business exponentially forward. And so she had all kinds of ideas on what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. And none of them resonated with me. And I found that I started to really doubt myself as I was going through this year-long process with her. And like I said, I spent a lot of money. So there was, that part of your brain going, oh my God, I'm so dry. I need to pay somebody to help my brain work again. So your brain starts to work against you in times like that, right? And so then she would come up with all kinds of ideas on how to be creative, and none of them worked for me. And I thought, I'm a one-trick pony. I'm done. Like I've got nothing else. And so really got in my headspace. And then one day, I don't know what the trigger was. And I just went, you know what? This doesn't work for me. And I went back to what worked for me, and just boom. It's like that whole year that I took to be creative, everything just trapped inside of me. And when I admitted that her methods weren't my methods, and her methods were more like exactly like you talked about, every morning, spend 45 minutes, sit down and just do the brain dump. I couldn't, it just wouldn't come. And I felt useless. Right. So when I finally stopped saying I must follow this very rigid plan, and I trusted my own self, that whole year's worth of ideas just fell out of my head. It was fantastic.
So what were some of you mentioned, like she was saying to you, like kind of morning pages, Julia Cameron style, often you like creativity. What other things did she tell you that just really didn't, for your personality type, the way that your creativity works, it just didn't really work for you?
And I'm almost afraid to tell you, because you still see a lot of this stuff out there. So one of the things is like sit down and come up with, say, 52 blog titles, and come up with the titles, and then each week sit down and write that blog. Or come up with like all your social media plan in advance. Like that kind of stuff just didn't work for me. It didn't feel organic. I like to be a little bit more timely on things. And so if in January I say I'm going to write a blog post in December about, family dysfunction, theory says I can easily write an article about family dysfunction. It's just at the time I might not have the content, whereas I might have that content in June, and then I'd write it, And so it was really about trying to be more strategic on the creativity, and that just didn't really work for me.
Yeah. It's funny. I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine who's a very successful YouTuber. And, that one of the dangers with a lot of these very successful YouTubers is they get burnt out creatively because they're having to constantly produce. And he did, at one point people were telling, just as you said, like plan it like weeks and weeks ahead and months ahead. And he said all of the juice of his creativity just got sucked out. He said, I just didn't feel joyful kind of going into the studio every morning. And he said for him, what worked for him was that, you said it sounds like for you, you're very much a kind of an evening kind of creative ideas person. Other people are more morning. He's more of a morning person, but he just said he would get up in the morning and not give himself. He knew that his morning was his time. He always had that blocked out, but he said, where's my energy today? But, and he would just kind of connect with that part of himself first. That's what worked for him. And it's not to say that you're saying that like scheduling things out. Some people are really that works really well for them. I'm probably a little bit more like you, kind of you get into your thing and you're just going to get inspired and you kind of want to really push into it and get excited about it and get juiced about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started, you made this kind of move. All these ideas started kind of flooding to you. How you mentioned that word strategic. How did you then know which ideas you wanted to pursue and which ideas were like, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to put that to a side just now? What's your filter that you use?
If my filter is, if I put it aside and I keep going, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, then I'm excited about it. And if I put it aside and I forget about it, I'm not. And it stays on the side. Like I have, say, writing articles, I have 1,000 articles that are half written because I never got excited about going back to them. And so if I can start and finish an article, in one sitting, that's a really good sign. If I want to write more about it, that's a good sign that I need to do more with that. And then I always come back 24 hours later, do another re-edit, to make sure that it still makes sense in my head. And if I'm still like, oh, this is good, then I know that I've got something and I move forward with it. So if I can write one article, get very excited about it, where I want to then do a webinar or write another article, or I say, I could probably do a book on this, something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's my sort of, okay, Rhonda, move forward with this. And then I will potentially schedule, writing out, let's say, a workshop or a keynote or a book chapter or a webinar. And then when I go back to it, if I'm still excited, then yeah, I'm all in.
Great. So it's almost like you're kind of using your, you're not having to kind of use your memory. It's just that something's calling to you. Like, okay, there's something here. You just
Yep.
keep coming back to it. Now, in this latest book, first of all, I have to ask, why did you decide to write this book now? Because you were coming like personal effectiveness and you were in that space. And this felt like a very different kind of thing that you were starting to do here. So what was it about this book at this time?
Yes and no. And so because I talk about personal effectiveness and being more efficient, and a lot of people were starting to hear things about AI. And of course, the Alexas and the Googles and the Siris and the Cortanas and everything that goes with that, right? And so people would say, so should I be worried? And I'd be talking about, well, here's what you need to do. And then one day I said, because the reality is Alexa's stealing your job. And it just kind of went, whoa, great title. And I was just starting to get just the top level of inquiry about AI. And I'm very gadgety. So I was very excited about it. And that's really where the whole thing started. So the title came first. And I thought that was one of those ideas that would not go away. And the book came very quickly.
So that's a great title. Alexa stealing your job. I realize. So as you started telling other people, even before you started maybe writing, you were just spitballing people like, yeah, I've got this idea for a book. This time, what do you think about it? What kind of reactions were you getting?
I wasn't even saying about the book. I was using that language in my workshops and in my keynotes and talking about the future. So like many efficiency experts, we talk about where we've been and where we're going. Mm-hmm. And so, the where we've been, we all laugh about, the stuff that we used to do. And then where we're going, I would throw out that line, Alexa stealing your job. And you could just see it smack on people's faces, right? So for a long time, I didn't even say that was the title of my book. When I started to say, I'm writing a book on AI and in the future of work, and how that's going to affect your efficiency. People love the title, but naturally the title is very negative. But I still love the title. The book is not negative. It's not all about how we're going to have mass unemployment and we're all going to be, sitting at home eating Cheetos on the couch. Like that's definitely not the case. And so initially, when I started putting it out that it was title, it was a book, I got a lot of fear. And so I wanted to, because people are like, really? Am I? And, they get all the panic. So anytime there's fear, there's hesitancy to even learn about it. So it started a conversation. And that's really what a title should do, is start the conversation. So I thought, yeah, we're good.
But it's interesting. It could be viewed as negative, that title. I think that's an interesting one because, people like Donald Miller, Story Brand, talks a lot about, as much as we would sometimes love to think that people act from, seeking pleasure, which is, pain or pleasure, like Freud, actually people are more driven by avoiding pain and anything that is about, getting resources or any of those kind of things, almost primeval part of us are, our alert signals kind of go up. I'm like, oh, I need to pay attention to this. And it's not, I'm going to say whether it's good or bad. It's just kind of this is kind of what it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to Rory Vaden, a speaker you probably have known as well, from the United States, and he said, I think one of his books was it's like it was about procrastination. I think it was called Procrastinating on Purpose, I think was the name of the book. And he said after he'd written the book, he said he wished he hadn't made it a negative. We're talking about procrastination rather than productivity or something like that. But I actually quite liked the book because it kind of speaks right to the challenge first as well.
The pain.
So you were people kind of giving you this feedback as well. How did you because this is kind of goes to a confidence, I guess, a creative confidence, to be able to go, no, I'm hearing all these things, and some people are saying I really don't like this, and other people are saying, yeah, it's like, how did you decide actually, no, I'm going to go ahead with this?
Yeah, I did hear some negative things from people I really value their opinion on. And they're like, don't take on Amazon. Amazon's like the giant. And as soon as you say something negative about Amazon, you're going to get shut down. And I thought, valid. Yeah, that's it. So I looked into making sure that I wasn't breaking any, of course, legal lines using the title. But I thought, oh, you know what? Then I thought, you know what? If Amazon pays attention, that's probably a good thing. If I'm going to threaten them, and of course they haven't even remotely paid attention. They carry the book and they're fine, right? And so I very much like the creative question that you asked earlier. I just couldn't let go. Every time somebody would say, Rhonda, I don't think that that's the right title for you. And if it was somebody that I didn't know, I sort of thought, yeah. But when it was somebody that I valued their opinion, it was like, And for as many people that I heard don't do that, I heard twice as many that said, brilliant. So I ended up going back to, that little idea would not go away. And I thought, can I use it as a subtitle? Can I use it as a chapter title? Like I just wouldn't let go of it. So then I thought, no, I'm going to trust myself. And that is going to be the title, because that's the title I'm really passionate about.
Now, in the book, anyone watching, listening to this just now, will be probably very familiar, because we have talk about a lot on the show in terms of things like AI, machine learning, robotics. University of Oxford estimates that 50% of jobs could disappear over the next few years. We're kind of we hear all these things all the time. And I think there's a real craving for people going, okay, so what does that mean for me? How does that relate to me? What can I do as well? And you kind of go through in the book, obviously different elements of this. And there's 3 words that you use in the book. I think you have it in one of a chapter, which is in terms of where the new jobs, because this is the bit that often doesn't get talked about. Like, well, what are the new opportunities here? And you talk about trainers, explainers, and sustainers as a term. So first of all, put us maybe at ease a little bit. How much do we have, or how much do you think we have to fear from AI? How should we be thinking about AI? And then can you go a little bit in depth into these new opportunities that are going to be coming around from AI?
Yeah. First of all, I'm not afraid of AI at all. I don't think that we're going to end up in, the Terminator or a Space Odyssey or anything like that. And that's why we have sustainers, those type of jobs. So I also am very much of the belief that we're going to see a net positive creation of jobs. And if you look, this is the 4th industrial revolution. Every time we've had a revolution of sorts, like take robotics in the 50s, everybody was worried there was going to be no more jobs. And then computers came in the 70s and 80s. Everybody said the same thing. And both of those are perfect examples of how we've created far more jobs than have lost. And what ends up happening with each industrial revolution or each sort of change, we lose the bottom layer of jobs. Absolutely. So the very manual labor, the very non-brain intensive stuff does disappear. And that's what robotics did to the factory lines, when they created all of that. Computers did that for typing pools and data entry and, all that sort of manual stuff. And AI will do the same sort of thing. Each time it has been an opportunity to sort of jump in your career. And I was in that jump time in the 80s. Like I was working as an administrative job, which was fine. I had no problem with that. But because I was able to take that opportunity and jump, I'm a bazillion times better, mentally, financially, physically, everything, because I saw that opportunity. And I think right now I know we're in that opportunity right now. There's been a lot of studies released. I just posted one on social media that was floating around LinkedIn yesterday about how the number one job for 2020 is about artificial intelligence. And so we're at the very beginning of what those jobs look like. And so it's not like you can go to university right now and take those. They don't exist. So the trainers, sustainers, explainers, trainers are very much the advancement, in my opinion, the advancement of what a programmer would do. So a programmer, you know, back when we got computers, and all your listeners know this stuff, you know, Control P or file print is the only way you're going to get something to print. Well, a trainer will train whatever device to learn not only your language, your accent, how you ask for things, when things are successful, when things are not, so that by the time Alexa appeared on my counter at home, she was always already well trained in many different commands. I didn't have to learn her sequence. She had to learn mine. And so that's what trainers do. So sustainers can, and that I think will be an evolution of what we know as computer programmers and, you know, coding and, you know, that sort of stuff. I think that that's where that job is already evolved to, never mind going to evolve to. Sustainers are going to make sure that we don't get things like the Terminator. We don't get things like HAL, where they go off like crazy and they just learn too much. And already we have had examples of that. There was an organization that put a chatbot on Twitter, and very quickly the public trained it to be racist. And so sustainers would be able to pull back on all of that. So they would see the learning that the machine had created and would unlearn it, so to speak, give it, you know, that Men in Black, you know, shot, forget everything that you just learned. So that sustainers will make sure that those type of things don't continue. An explainer will explain why things happen. So if you get a self-automated car and for whatever reason it chooses not to stop at the stop sign, almost like, you know, the flight guys look at the black box of a plane to explain why a plane went down. An explainer will explain why a device did what it did in hindsight. So those are three sort of categories of jobs that are going to be created from the AI world that kind of sort of exist now, but not entirely. And we're going to need people for all of those things.
One of the questions I get is I can almost be guaranteed to get it. I was speaking in Singapore today, but last week I was speaking in Bangkok, and this keynote, at the end of it, I speak about creativity and artificial intelligence, and at the end of it, and I almost know it's coming in. It's usually like the third or the second question in, and it's something along the lines of, what should I be, my son or my daughter, what should they be learning now in order to prepare themselves? Yeah. It's a big question. So I'd love to get your take on that. Of you know, because I'm sure you get it when you speak on stage and you talk about this, and people say they've got kids like, well, okay, I may be in my, so someone who's in their late 50s, and I think, well, I'm kind of going to be retiring soon, but I'm worried about my grandchildren or my children, what they're going to be doing. So what suggestions do you make to them?
So there's been some interesting statistics just recently out, and the half-life of a college degree, university degree, is 6 years. So by the time you start, like, it's crazy, right? So by the time you start, what you're learning is irrelevant. And for kids going into the first grade, so you think 5-year-olds, 65% of the jobs that exist right now in, you know, 2020 will not exist by the time that kid gets through university. And so, you know, when I say, what advice do you give to your kids? I say, don't pigeonhole them. Don't tell them that they should be a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, a teacher. Let's see what the world is going to look like. Obviously, give them lots of education and the ability to think. And I think one of the most valuable skills that we've always had and will continue to develop is strategic thinking and creative thinking. And so I encourage people to don't say, oh my gosh, I can never find a plumber, I want my kid to be a plumber. Because by the time your kid gets through school, we're not going to need a plumber. Or maybe, like, it may be so different, right? So if I think about when I was a kid, you know, I don't want to say that I was pigeonholed, because that, you know, it paints my parents bad, but I knew out of the gate that I was going to university. Like, there was never any doubt, right? And I don't know that we know that now. I think that the learning is going to change significantly. So I say, certainly give your child the ability to learn, give them the belief that they can do anything, and let them be really creative and really strategic at the same time, and they're going to be fine. Now, for somebody who's in their late 50s, I say, you know, for the most part, you're probably going to be fine. But my telling is, if you can do something twice and you can write instructions on how to do that, then AI can do that. So look at all of the other parts of your job that are based here, that when you're on vacation don't get done, that there's nobody who can jump into your brain that can do that sort of stuff, and then invest all in on whatever that part of your job is, because that's why the company's going to need you. The company's not going to need you to show up and unlock the door. The company's not going to need you to file invoices. They're not going to need you to do the check run. The company's going to need you on a different level. So what is the stuff that you can't write instructions for, and jump both feet into that pool, because that's where you're going to be valued.
So it's almost like looking at a job in terms of bundles of tasks, and then kind of unbundling them and saying, actually, some of these tasks can be better for machines, frankly, to do, automated even.
Quite better.
And other ones are going to be, actually, this is very difficult because it involves lots of different types of abilities or skills, and it's crossing. And it's funny, I had a bit of a disagreement the other day with a doctor about this, and we were talking about AI, and this was someone who's not particularly interested in AI or what it's going to be doing in healthcare, which I was kind of surprised. And we had a conversation, and he said, well, the thing is, us doctors will be fine. And I said, really? I'm not so sure about that. I said, I would have argued that doctors are in the most trouble. Nurses are actually have a better chance, because I think like a doctor, what is a doctor doing? They're just, someone's coming in, they're saying you have these conditions. You're saying, okay, you have this, this, or this. Okay, I think it's this. We run some tests. Then this is the prescription. This is the thing you take.
Agreed.
Perfect for a machine, to be able to do that.
Perfect.
Nurse, they're physically often have to lift patients. So there's a mechanical side, compassion, bedside manner. There is a lot of tasks that a doctor would be doing as well. Drawing bloods, all kinds of things. There's lots of mixtures in there as well. So if any doctors watching, then that's my take. So some of these jobs, when you were doing your research, were any kind of jobs that you discovered that you thought, maybe at the start you thought, actually this job's going to be safe, it's going to be fine, but actually when you did your research you went, oh, actually I think this is, if I was doing this job today, or I have a friend that was doing this job, I might ask them to start thinking about reskilling?
Yeah, and medicine is actually a really perfect example of that. And that's kind of where you sort of think, somebody spends all the years to become a doctor. We've got many years of needing them. And as I was going through the research, I went, you know what? No, like exactly where you are. And one that surprised me the opposite way is I thought education could be more automated, and it's not going to be. I mean, elements of it are for sure. Education also tends to move a little slower, but yeah, so there was a couple that I went, yeah, there's a lot of things that can be done. And there was some real aha moments. And when I talk to people, I try not to, get too opinionated on what I think will be. It's like, here's the facts, and, here's what you need to know. But there definitely are some that so I sent out a survey to my database a couple years ago before I was writing the book, when I was, the brain was starting to go on artificial intelligence. And I was floored at how many people didn't even know what AI was. So this is early 2018. So I sent out the survey, and they didn't even know what AI was. And so I would say, okay, what parts of your job do you think can you be automated? And I'm dealing with frontline, say, administrative professionals. And I got crazy answers like, we'll always need someone to answer the phone. I'm like, we haven't needed somebody to answer the phone since 1980. Like, what are you talking about? Like it was, people are just, their heads are completely stuck in the sand. So I think that there are a lot of jobs that these task-based components can completely disappear. And we've got a lot of people making the decisions that they can't. So I think there's a difference between what can be automated and what will be automated in the next 5 to 10 years. And then that decision is going to be gone. And so I think that so a lot of those jobs that people think are safe may be safe for a little bit of time, because people are very hesitant to let the computers take over. And then once we realize, it's going to be a done deal.
Fantastic. So as you were kind of just to start to finish up, I would love to know from you. We're going to have links to your book here as well, so people can just really, if there's AI, they've been kind of hearing about it, maybe thinking a little bit about it, but not really sure how it affects them. We're going to have a link here if people get the book. But I'd love for you to also recommend maybe another book by another author, a book that you think that is maybe absolutely a really good accompaniment to this book, but it doesn't necessarily go well, or a book just to in a book that you maybe gifted more often over the past 12 months to those you've recommended more often to other people.
Gosh, I'm a voracious reader, and so but horrible memory on stuff. The book I'm reading right now, I really like. It's called Clockwork, and it's by, and I'm going to get his last name wrong, but it's Michael, and his last name is Michaelkowski or something like that. It's like a Michael name, but it's called Clockwork. And that's the book that I've been talking a lot about, because what it's all about is creating a self-sustaining company. So how you are not the only doer. Like, so if something happened to James Taylor, is your company going to be okay? If something happens to Rhonda Scharf, is, you know, am I the one driving the bus kind of stuff? And so while it's not focused on AI, it's a really good accompaniment, because it is about automating. It is about taking stuff out of your brain and getting it into processes or systems, or in somebody else's brain, or in many other people's brains. Because I think that, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, if you were to get sick tomorrow, what happens? And this is where AI really can help us a lot. Like, if I choose to take an afternoon nap, which I don't, but should I choose to, why can I not just put my automated bot on the phone or on the website and let that take over, so that I don't feel tied to what I'm doing? Things like that. So Clockwork is a really good.
Great. We'll put that link here. Actually, it almost reminds me of, you know, like Michael Gerber, E-Myth, that you're talking about.
Yes,
there.
yeah.
I don't know, someone at some point should write an E-Myth style book, but for AI instead of like checklists.
Yeah.
But we're in quite a lot of flux, obviously, on the AI, in terms of things change so quickly. It would probably be quite a hard book to write. And what about online? Are there any kind of online tools or apps you find particularly useful for the work that you do?
Gosh, good question. Sometimes you use stuff and you don't even realize you use it, right? I, of course, have the automated bot on my Facebook page, just so that I can show people how to use it. I look at them all. I use, you know, all the apps. Trello. I think I'd be lost without Trello. You know, things like, and Slack, you know, all of those things, but they're not necessarily AI robust yet. But I think they will be. I think it's just a matter of time. I use a lot of different CRM packages that are, you know, automated, not really AI based. So with I test lots of AI. I haven't jumped all in to, so I'm trying to go at the speed of my audience. So if I'm 50,000 pages ahead of them, I scare them. Yeah. And so I tell people to get, you know, an Alexa or a Google at home, get the plugs, get the Nest thermostat, get the Ring doorbell, which I realize is all, you know, 5 years old stuff, but I'm sort of trying to keep up at that speed, not try to get light years ahead of them.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it's funny you mentioned actually this morning where I'm in this hotel. I'm so used to having Alexa, like we talking about that. Like this morning, you wake up and I almost automatically go, Alexa, play BBC Radio 4, play weather like that, and nothing happens in the room, and I'm kind of surprised. Oh, it's a dumb hotel room. I forgot. I mean, I'm not in a real hotel room, but we're gonna, like, a lot of those devices, those things that we currently press buttons for. So many of them are just going to be you know, they're going to have a different way of working. So what about you're in Canada today, and something that's Canada does extremely well. A lot of very creative people, amazing authors, but you have a lot of amazing musicians and composers from there as well. If you were to recommend one album to our audience, what would the album be?
Wow, what a great question. I'm trying to think. I'm from the 80s, so I'm a Bryan Adams girl. Like, there's just, you know, that's just never going to change. I love Blue Rodeo. They don't produce anymore, but they're a huge Canadian favorite, and they play kind of soft country stuff. Blue Rodeo is, but I'd probably still default to Bryan Adams. There's nothing wrong with the Summer of '69. So I still like what he does. Like, and of course, you know, Michael Bublé never goes wrong. You can always listen to him too. He's never going to get old either.
Two great Canadians. So let's imagine, Rhonda, you woke up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. So you have all the knowledge, all the skills you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you. You have to start with a blank page. What would you do? How would you restart things today?
I would probably start as a writer, and my beginning would be being a thought leader and putting out thoughts that other people don't think. I don't have to think about, you know, my standard box that I'm in right now. And I would be probably controversial. I would challenge people's thinking. I would put out, whether it's books or articles or vlogs or blogs or whatever it happens to be, and I'd get noticed, because I think that's the best way to get anywhere.
Going controversial. So it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Rhonda. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing with this Great. I actually love the title. I don't care what any of your colleagues or friends have said. I think it's a phenomenal title. And so please, people, go and check out this book. We're going to have links here. If people want to just connect with you, learn a bit more about you, your speaking programs, I know you have other products as well. Where's the best place for them to go and do that?
Just Google my name is really the best place. So it's Rhonda, R-H-O-N-D-A. So Rhonda with an H and Scharf with an H, S-C-H-A-R-F. I got a bazillion different websites. I have alexastealingyourjob.com. You'll find me there. You'll find me all over social media. Very easy to find, and just absolutely reach out. I'm real. I'm not a chatbot. I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm not somebody sitting right here, right? It's really me. And I will respond to you. And you might not be sure it's me, so ask me some kind of question. And then if I don't give you the right answer, obviously it's not me. But yeah, I'm easy to contact, and please reach out for sure.
Well, Rhonda, it's been an absolute pleasure today. Thank you so much for taking us through your creative life, and I wish you great success into the next year.
Thank you.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.